This is Oracle Code Online. Hi, and welcome to Introduction to Vue.js. My name is Jennifer Bland, and I will be your instructor today. I am a senior software engineer with over 10 years of development experience. I am a full-stack developer doing JavaScript development, but I focus on front-end development. I have worked with Vue.js for 2 years now. I am a published author, having written a book on Lotus Notes development for IBM. I am also a Google Developers expert in web technologies. If you want to get in touch, you can follow me on Twitter at RatRaceGrad. I also teach a wide range of courses on my website, codeprep.io. Check it out if you're interested in watching more of my training courses. I'm excited to have created this introductory course on Vue.js for you. So let's get started. This course is a general introduction to Vue.js. First, we will cover what Vue is and why you would want to use it. Business and development teams need to use a product that will provide the best ROI for them. After all, businesses are creating products and services that solve a business need or requirement. After this course, you should have enough information to determine if your development team should be using Vue. Next, I will cover some of the core features of the Vue framework. I will talk about these features and provide you with a general example of each one. I won't be diving into detail into any of these topics. Instead, I want to provide a context of how Vue works. Last, I will cover the Vue ecosystem. If you're familiar with the MVC model view controller pattern of creating a website, then you will know that Vue provides the view or the V of the MVC pattern. There is a very vibrant ecosystem built around Vue that provides additional functionality to Vue. I will cover multiple products that make up this ecosystem and why you should consider using each of them in your applications. Before we get started learning about Vue, I want to answer a question that many of you might have. That question is, why use Vue.js? That's a fair question to ask. If you are a developer and you want to use Vue.js in your development at work, you might need to explain to your manager why you should use it. There are several entrenched front-end frameworks that development teams have been using for the past decade. If you've done any type of front-end development during this time, you've probably used jQuery, AngularJS, Angular, or React. So the question is why you should use something other than these established frameworks or libraries. The simple answer to that question is Vue has taken the best features from Angular and React and put it into a package that is better. If you're starting a brand new application, then Vue will definitely work for you. But most development is done on existing applications or what is referred to as legacy applications. Being able to use Vue in these legacy existing applications is a very big selling point for Vue. It does not matter if that application was created using jQuery, AngularJS, Angular, React, or even PHP. You can incorporate Vue into these applications by either adding new functionality or improving existing functionality. As I mentioned earlier in the MVC pattern, Vue only provides the view part. Because the core layer is only focused on the view layer, Vue is easy to integrate into our projects. Being able to use Angular or React in an existing legacy application is almost impossible to do. It is extremely easy to incorporate Vue within existing applications. Another feature of Vue is its short learning curve. It is possible to learn the basics of the Vue programming language and start building with it in just a day or two. The learning curve for using Angular or React is much longer and steeper. Vue is a JavaScript framework. If you have developers that are experienced with JavaScript, they will be able to quickly learn Vue. If your developers are familiar with Angular or React, they will find the core concepts of Vue like a virtual DOM and directives easy to understand. Vue uses standalone components. These components contain the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in one file. Anybody that is trying to work on your code base will find it easy to understand because all of the parts of those components are in one place. Recently, Vue became the #1 framework on GitHub measured by the number of stars. At the time I created this course, Vue has over 100,000 stars on GitHub. In a recent survey of JavaScript frameworks, Vue was voted the framework that developers most wanted to learn and use. This increase in popularity has driven a very vibrant ecosystem to support it. This popularity provides for the introduction of new features as well as fast fixes to bugs. So let's start by defining what Vue.js is. Vue is a JavaScript library for the Vue layer. That means it is used for building user interfaces. So, what is a library? A library is a wrapper around the code that you write that gets executed before your own code. The library provides the functionality that you expect to have in Vue. By default, browsers do not understand a library. So how do you convert your code into something that the browser will understand? The library works by having a render engine. The render engine will take a data model and components as input, convert them, and then outputs HTML that any browser can understand and display to users. Vue applications are broken down into components. If you have a traditional blog website, you might have a component that provides the application's navigation that is positioned at the top of the page. The list of articles in your blog can be another component. If you click on an article to read the details for that article, the details can be displayed using yet another component. If you want to provide more content for users in a sidebar, you can have a sidebar component. Finally, you can have a component that provides the footer for your blog website. The components are put together in a hierarchy to create your application. By breaking your application into separate components, you can take a component you built for one application and easily integrate it into another application, thus reducing your development time. Vue provides another functionality that it calls reactivity. What this means is if you change a data value, it triggers an update on the page to reflect that change. Let me give you an example of how this works. You have a checkout page. As users add items to their cart, the total amount is updated automatically. If a user has an item in their cart and changes the quantity from 1 to 2, the total amount of the cart doubles. You don't have to send the cart to the server to get the total calculated like you had to do before, nor do you have to create JavaScript or even jQuery code to calculate the total. The reactivity feature of Vue handles this for you. Another functionality that Vue provides is that it is fast. Why is this important? Amazon calculated that a page load slowdown of just 1 second could cost it $1.6 billion in sales each year. Google has calculated that by slowing its search results by just 0.4 of a second, they could lose 8 million searches per day. Vue has a very fast initial page load because it is a small package. Vue will render your application fast. Earlier, I talked about the render engine. The render engine is optimized to provide a very fast loading experience for your application. Speed is critical for web applications, and Vue is extremely fast. Now that we have covered what Vue is and why you want to use it, let me give you an overview of the core features in Vue. A Vue application is a collection of many components that are put together in some hierarchy. Each component is created in a file with a .vue extension. A .vue file contains everything that you need for that component to work. It contains the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code for the component. If you have programmers that are familiar with creating web applications, they can easily apply those skills in creating Vue components. Having all the code for a component in a single file is an advantage. If you want to use that component in another application, then everything you need will be contained in that file. So let's look at a sample Vue file. A Vue file consists of 3 sections. There is the template section, the script section, and the style section. What are these sections and what do they do? The template section contains the HTML code that will be displayed to the user. In this example, I have a single paragraph tag that will display the word hello and the text that is contained in a data item called name. The pair of curly braces around name is called interpolation. The Vue render engine will replace these braces with the value in the data object. When this component is displayed in the browser, the user will see hello, Jennifer. The script section contains the JavaScript code. This is the logic of your application. In my script section, I have a data object. The data object has a key of name which contains the value Jennifer. It is this value that is inserted in the HTML code via interpolation. The last section is the style sections. Styles are scoped, meaning that they only apply to the HTML code in this component. They will not impact the HTML in any other component that is part of your application. With Vue, it's very easy to toggle the presence of an element. Let's look at an example. We have some HTML code that will display a name. Next, we have a span tag that has a VIF directive on it. It is comparing the data variable called age to see if it is a value is greater than 50. If it is greater than 50, then the text, I remember 8-track tapes, will be displayed. Here is the code for our component. It has 2 data items, name and age. The value of age is 57. Since 57 is greater than 50, this is what will be displayed to the user in the browser. Let's take the same example and change the value of age from 57 to 35. In that case, the VIF will be false and the initial text will not be displayed. The second span has a VElse directive. This is displayed if the VIF is false. In this example, the user will see a different output. Here is what the user will see now. Using a VIF directive, you can dynamically control the content that is displayed to your users. These 2 examples demonstrate that we can combine data not only to text and attributes, but also the structure of the DOM. Vue also provides a v-for directive. This directive can be used for displaying a list of items using the data from an array. So let's look at an example. In the code, I display a name. Then I have a list of items that I like. Look at the list item tag. It has the v-for directive applied to it. The v-for directive will loop over every item contained in the things array. Every time it goes through the loop, the current item in the array is assigned to a value called thing. That value is being displayed. If you look at the data model, I have an array called things. This is an array of strings. This contains the items that I like. Here is what's displayed to the user. The v-for directive created a bulleted list of items that I like. You can also use the vModel directive to create two-way data bindings on form input, text area, and select elements. Vue's two-way binding system takes one of the trickiest parts of developing a web application, user input synchronization, and makes it dead simple with the vModel directive. The vModel directive updates the template whenever the model changes and updates the data model whenever the template changes. Now that's a mouthful, so let's look at an example. Here I have a very common element found in forms, an input field. The input field will contain text. The input field has the vModel directive and it is assigned a value of name. Name corresponds to an item in the data model. Below the input field, I'm displaying the value of name from the data model. Here is my data model with name. Initially, its value is set to an empty string. As the user types their name in the input field, the value that they type will be stored in the data model. Likewise, if we programmatically change the value of name in the data model, then the value in the input field would change accordingly. Let's see this in action. As I type in the input field, it updates the value in the data model, as you can see as it's displayed below. Two-way data binding is a powerful feature that, if used properly, can significantly speed up your development process. It reduces the complexity of keeping user input consistent with the application data model. To let users interact with your app, you can use the vOn directive to attach event listeners that invoke methods on our Vue instances. If a user clicks a button, you can do something in response. Let's look at an example. In my HTML code, I have a button with the vOn directive. I am using the click modifier to signal that the method should only be called if the user clicks the button. When the user clicks the button, the method called doIt will be executed. Here is the doIt method in our Vue application. The method increments the value of the count item in the data model by 1 every time the button is clicked. Notice that in this method, we update the state of our app without touching the DOM. All DOM manipulations are handled by Vue. Your code you write is focused on the underlying logic. Let's see this in action. Every time the button is clicked, the value of count in the data model is incremented by 1. You can see the value is changing because we are displaying it in the text. Vue allows you to manipulate or assign values to HTML attributes, change the style, or assign classes with the help of a binding directive called vbind. I will give you an example of all of these. Let's first start with dynamically assigned values to HTML attributes. Here, I have a button. When a user clicks the button, the changePick method will be called. Note, here I am using the shorthand version of the vOn click method that we saw in the previous example. Below the button, I have an image element. I'm using the vbind directive for the source to dynamically change the image that is being displayed. Every time the user clicks the button, the image will change. Now let me show you my Vue code. In my data model, I have an array called sources. This array contains a URL of 2 different cat images. In my methods, you will find my changePick method. When this method executes, it increments the value of current in the data model. Initially, current is set to a value of -1. When this method executes the first time, that value will increment and will contain a value of 0. Next, it checks to see if this value is equal to the length of my sources array. If it is equal, Then it changes the value of current to 0. Next, it sets the value of source in the data model to the value of the item in the sources array. The first time I click the button, the first image is displayed. The next time I click the button, the second image is displayed. This pattern repeats between displaying the two images. Let's see this in action. Every time I click the button, the image changes. The vBind directive allows you to dynamically assign styles to a DOM element. Let's say we want to increase or decrease the font size based on user input. To this end, Vue provides us with the vBind :style directive. I use 2 buttons in the template and an inline expression that will increment and decrement the font size variable on the click event. After the buttons, I have a paragraph that has a vBind :style directive attached to it. This attaches the font size model value to the CSS font size property. Note, camel case will be evaluated to -case syntax. Font size, one word, camel case will be evaluated to font-size. Here is my data model. I initially set the font size to a value of 18. Let's see this in action. As I click the buttons, the font size increases and decreases accordingly. Rather than having all the styles in the inline expression, we can keep a styles object in the data model and apply it to the vBind :style directive as well. If needed, we can add multiple style objects to the vBind style directive. In the data model, I have 2 style objects, base styles and override styles. In the template, I simply provide an array of the style objects that should be applied. In the array, I'm applying both styles. Note the importance of the order of the items in the array, with latter items overriding the previous ones. Vue automatically adds the required vendor prefix to help keep the syntax clean. This is for styles that need prefix such as -moz or -webkit. The last example I want to provide for the vBind directive is to apply styles to an element. Applying styles directly can get complex as the requirements change. To help with this, the vBind :class directive provides us with a way to bind classes to an element. For example, when a menu item is selected, we may need to underline the element, change its color, and change the font weight. While this is possible to implement with a style binding, it's much cleaner to apply a class when the item is selected. Here is the HTML for this example. When an item is clicked, we can set the value of the selected variable to be equal to the current item. When this is in place, we use the vBind :class directive in order to set the selected class on the item if the selected variable is equal to the current item. To achieve this, we use an array of menu items and the selected item in the data model. The selected value will be set by default to be home. When a user clicks on an item, the value will change to reflect the item that was clicked. The last thing we need to do for this example is our style. In the styles sections, we add our selected class. We set the font weight to blue, we set the font color to blue, the font weight to bold, and add an underline. Let's see this in action. As I click items in the menu, the styles change to reflect the item that was clicked. Watchers provide a way to observe and react to data changes on a Vue instance. While computed properties are more appropriate in most cases, there are times when a custom watcher is necessary. That's why Vue provides a more generic way to react to data changes through the watch option. This is most useful when you want to perform asynchronous or expensive operations in response to changing data. Generally, you use watchers when you want to execute some logic that applies to something else when a change on a property occurs. Let me give you an example. Here, I have an input field that accepts numbers. I'm going to watch counter in our data model. When it changes, I want to do something. In my data model, I have counter, which I have set to initial value of 0. I have added a watcher for counter. When the value of counter changes, I write out to the console that the counter changed. Now let's see this in action. Here I have my input field. When I click to increase the counter, you can see it on the console. If I click again to increase the counter, you see another console entry. A watcher is looking for changes in the value of a particular data item. When that value changes, we might need to know what was the old value as well as the new value. A watcher will provide that information for us. The watcher function has two parameters, new value and old value. Here, I have changed my watcher on counter to have the two parameters for new value and old value. Likewise, I have modified the console.log to show both values. Now let's see this in action. We have the same input field. When I click to change, the console.log shows the new value as well as the old value. If I click again, you see both values have changed. Now that we have covered some of the core features of Vue, I want to talk about Vue's ecosystem. Just as a reminder, Vue provides just the view part of the MVC pattern. Also, Vue is very fast in loading and performance because it provides just this core functionality. This allows you the freedom to add additional libraries to support the base functionality of Vue if and only if you need that functionality. In some frameworks, you're burdened with the size of these additional libraries even if you do not use them. You do not have that burden with Vue. Vue has a very robust ecosystem surrounding it. These libraries provide additional tooling and functionality for Vue. The ecosystem provides libraries for routing, state management, styling, and adding custom components. The first one that I want to talk about is the Vue CLI. The Vue CLI is a full system for rapid Vue.js development. You would install Vue CLI globally on your computer so that you have it available to quickly scaffold out Vue applications, add functionality to your existing applications, or serve your application or build an application for deployment to production. Vue CLI is a command line tool that provides a number of commands that you can use. For example, the Vue CLI provides commands to create a new project powered by the Vue CLI service, add, to install a plugin or invoke its generator in an already created project, invoke the generator of a plugin in an already created project, inspect, it inspects the Webpack config in a project, serve will serve up a .js or a .vue file in development mode with 0 config. Build builds out a JavaScript or a Vue file in production mode with 0 config. Config. This command inspects or modifies the config. The last command that I want to talk about is upgrade. This will upgrade your Vue CLI service and or plugins. The Vue CLI provides a lot of functionality from the command line that developers can use in their development. Development teams can establish company-wide standards for applications by using the Vue CLI. If you want to get started quickly and easily with the new Vue application, you should be using the Vue CLI. Next in the ecosystem is the Vue router. Routing is an essential part of any non-trivial single-page application. For Vue, this functionality is provided by the official Vue Router plugin. It deeply integrates with Vue.js core to make building a single page application with Vue a breeze. To use, you can install it using Yarn or npm. Once installed, you have to enable the Vue Router plugin to let Vue know that you're using it. Then you can create a route for each page on your application. Vue Router provides a wide range of features including nested routes, modular component-based router configuration, route params, query, and wildcards, Vue transition effects powered by Vue's transition system, fine-grained navigation control, links with automatic active CSS classes, HTML5 history mode or hash mode with auto fallback for IE9 support. And lastly, it provides a customizable scroll behavior. Another item in the Vue ecosystem is Vuex. Vuex is used for state management. It is similar to Redux. If you've done any serious development of large-scale, single-page applications, you're familiar with the concept of state management. Like any other library that's part of the Vue ecosystem, it can be installed using npm or Yarn. Once installed, you have to tell Vue that you're using it. To be able to take advantage of the features Vuex provides, you will need to create a store. A store is essentially a global reactive object which follows the normal Vue reactivity patterns. It cannot be accessed or modified directly in order to ensure a consistent state and allow easy tracking of changes. Now, to access the store, you'll have to import it in all of your components, or you can inject it into the root Vue instance to have it automatically injected into every component in your app, and it can be accessed as this $store. A Vuex store consists of state, actions, getters, mutations, and modules. State is a single source of truth in your application. To read data from a store, you will need to create a getter. A getter is simply a function in your store that takes a state object and returns a value from it. Direct modification of state in Vuex is done by calling a function called a mutation. A mutation is past the current state and an optional payload. The payload can be any object. Mutations must be synchronous and shouldn't return a value. In more complicated apps, it's likely that you will need to perform some asynchronous actions that modify the state. Vuex handles this with actions. They are defined on your state object as well and are past the entire state context, which allows them to access getters and commit mutations. They are expected, but not required, to return a promise indicating completion status. You can use ES 2017 async await, which allows you to write very terse but easy to understand async actions. To modify a state within an action, you call a mutation. A single store is fine if you're only working with a small set of data, but inevitably at some point you'll want to split your constantly growing list of actions, mutations, and getters into separate sections. Thankfully, Vuex provides a system to do this as well. This is called modules. A module is simply a normal object with state, getters, mutations, and action properties. Next in the Vue ecosystem is Vuetify. Vuetify is a material component framework for Vue applications. It provides functionality similar to Angular Material or Bootstrap to style your Vue applications. Besides styling, it provides a large number of components that you can use in your Vue application. Normally, you would write your own custom components to provide the functionality that you need in your applications. Vuetify provides components that are frequently used in applications that allow you to easily integrate into your application. For example, Vuetify provides components for buttons, icons, cards, carousels, form fields, data tables, dialogues, navigation menus, pagination, ratings, snack bars, steppers, tabs, toolbars, and more. There is a large number of components that are provided with Vuetify. All of these components have a pleasing appearance because they are built on the material design guidelines. Users have the option to customize each component as necessary to fit their application needs and requirements. Another feature of using Vuetify is that it has a very active community. If you need help with using an item, then you can reach out to the community to get assistance. The Vuetify development team is constantly incorporating new components and features into Vuetify. Using Vuetify in your application will greatly decrease development time since you're able to quickly add a component to provide the needed functionality in your application without having to write the code for that component yourself. Vuetify components are well tested, which provides reliability you need for your application. Last is Nuxt. Nuxt.js is a powerful and simple framework built to create universal server-side rendered applications using Vue.js. It was inspired by Next, which is React's server-side rendering framework. So, what is server-side rendering and why should you care? Well, there's one big problem with single-page applications. Many search engines cannot crawl your applications as intended, yet. This is a big problem if SEO needs to play a huge part for the success of your app. Granted, Google's algorithm has been updated in recent years to better handle these new experiences, but it's not quite perfect. With that aside, server-side rendering is also faster and improves performance, which is also important for your application's SEO. Nuxt speeds up rendering of your application by having the server do most of the work. It provides faster loading times on all devices, especially mobile. This is the end of the course. I want to recap some key points. Vue is very fast and lightweight. It's much easier to learn and start using than Angular or React. Vue applications are built from components. Vue has a vibrant ecosystem. Without it, Vue only renders the Vue layer. Thank you for watching this course on Vue, its core features, and the ecosystem around Vue. I hope it provides enough context for you to decide if you need to use Vue on your next development project. My name again is Jennifer Bland. If you want to reach me, you can find me on Twitter at RatRaceGrad. Also, visit my website, codeprep.io, to find more training courses. Thank you for watching.